And at 10, Henry. Now, there are many ways to consider Henry a victim of Purple Guy, but he's first on the list because not many of them are like as direct as the others on this list. Like, while we do see Henry killed by Baby in FNAF World, in the main series games he lives on to FNAF 6 where he burns in a fire, supposedly by his own hand. Unless Baby kills him before the fire, since he like cut her off when she was trying to do her whole thing, but that's just speculation. However, Henry was also the victim of Purple Guy's crimes when Charlotte died, as seen in FNAF 2 and FNAF 6, as well as in the books, since Henry lost his daughter Charlie to William when she was only 3 years old. Remember, when someone takes a life, the one who dies isn't the only victim, alright? Their friends, their family, anyone who loved the victim are victims as well. Okay, so this also extends to Henry's wife, who we don't know the name of as far as I know, since she may not even be alive in the games. So she could also definitely be alive in the movie, especially if William and Henry are. So we might even see both. That's a 2-for-1 deal on number 10. You're welcome. And at 9, Charlotte. Charlotte is one of the most troublesome victims that Purple Guy had. Being the first victim, Charlotte gets killed outside Fredbear's family diner, despite desperate attempts from her father, Henry, to prevent this, mainly by creating a security animatronic designed to be a puppet to protect other kids, but treat her as a priority. Remember the green bracelet thing? However, when it gets trapped in a box, it's unable to make it out to Charlotte in time to save her. So, in another attempt, the puppet saves her in a different way, allowing her agony to reach out and take hold of the animatronic. As the puppet, Charlotte then went on to share her gift of a second chance with the other animatronics, bringing them to life as well, resulting in William's ultimate undoing. So, in a way, Charlotte really is the one you should not have killed, but just like in like a name sense, not in like a character sense. Since if he had spared her, maybe none of the other animatronics would have been alive and he wouldn't have gotten killed or spring-locked or whatever. And also, if you want to stay up to date on the FNAF movie news, be sure you hit subscribe, because as soon as we actually find out something concrete, and that wouldn't be like a 30-second video, you'll know. And at 8, Cassidy. Cassidy is probably who you expected to be number 1 on this list. The generally assumed one you should not have killed, the missing children's victim who went on to possess Golden Freddy, at least if you believe Golden Freddy to be an actual animatronic and not a hallucination. Cassidy is described in the novels as a young girl with long black hair, which also is the description of the only human to appear as a picture in the FNAF survival logbook, or security logbook, depending on if you read the crossed out name or not. I call it both. The name Cassidy was also discovered in this book when a theorist going by username DPowerful1 took wrong or highlighted numbers from various pages and put them into the word search as coordinates, in essence, which has got to be the most complicated name drop in history, okay? Like, we dig through source code, we put like audio files through spectrograms, we put them on reverse and speed them up and trying to find clues, but this was even too much for this series, okay? Like, I don't know why you had to go make things so complicated, but timely pop culture references aside, I don't know if Cassidy's going to be in the movie, given how the screenplay is the Mike screenplay, at least going off what Scott said on Reddit years ago. But in that post he also said that he scrapped the Cassidy screenplay, so I doubt she'll be a major player, but she could still show up. And at 7, Storta's daughter. While we all know that Afton isn't the best father, I think that it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter in an animatronic testing facility. What? That seems to be what's going on, and that seems to be a bit too far, if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us down there as Michael to find out what's been going on, and then we get shoved full of Ennard bits so that all of those homicidal maniac robots escape. God, did William like know about that plan? Because in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her daddy proud, so was William's intent to send us down there so that Baby could escape? And if that is the case, why did he lock her down there in the first place? I don't know. I mean, like, if she was your daughter, why not just have her like chill around the house? Sure, she's a 6-foot tall giant clown robot, but in the books, Baby was able to transform between Baby and a human looking animatronic at will, so why not add that to this version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little bit more messed up, but like still more like you in the long run, right? This family's messed the hell up and nothing makes sense. But there you go. It happened. It still happened. Wow, that's messed up, man. And at 6, single dad. Alright, honestly, while he may have done some bad shit, we have to at least give Afton credit for being a single dad. In this economy, being a single parent sucks, okay? Like, yeah, sure, you love your kids, they're a blessing, yada yada yada, but come on, it sucks, okay? And especially considering how it seems like William didn't even want his kids, the fact that he kept them alive is... Wait a second, that's right, he didn't. One of the worst things to happen to William was becoming a single father because it did not help the kids. It definitely ended up being worse for them, but no matter what way you slice it, William suffered as well. If he didn't want the kids, he suffered because he had them. If he wanted them, he suffered because he had to watch them die and it was his fault. If he didn't care either way, his remaining son decided to dedicate his entire life to undoing his father's work and ultimately tried to kill him. It's a whole thing. Michael didn't even consider nursing home, okay? He was like, nope, straight up to the big shuffleboard game in the sky for you, old man. Or, I guess maybe the one probably downstairs. Side note, some people think that hell's a punishment, but like if Satan wants us to sin, why would he punish us for doing what he wanted, right? It feels like we'd be rewarded. Afton's probably just like bumping, just chilling with Satan. Halfway through into number 5, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like this guy pops up into your VR headset, then takes over your body without your consent, so now you end up killing for him. That's kind of messed up. Actually, no, not kind of, that's incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on too. She actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already pretty messed up, but then causing them to make a rabbit costume so you're still a furry is a whole other set of kinks that I don't even want to talk about. And then she knows that there's an evil inside her, but she can't do anything about it. She fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William has been saying to her. And she's now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police, and then lets that darker half track him down. And at 4, later that night. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since in the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happened after William kills Charlotte outside Fred Durst's family diner in FNAF 2's Take Cake minigame. But if this is true, this is probably one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids, reprimands his son and abuses him by locking him in his room so much that he had to break his window to escape. Plus, think of all the people driving past him, unaware of the violent crime that he had just committed. It's scary because this is the case in the real world too. Technically speaking, anyone we encounter can be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also you're only alive because everyone you've ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and is going to yell at his son who's been in his room all day. Like, god damn, bro, how much residual anger do you have suppressed inside your body? Getting close to the end, in at number 3, Stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics: Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is that he didn't get caught for it. Yeah, he didn't. The animatronics smelt like death, started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. He put these bodies in animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless it was his way of displaying his kills or something, like some of the crime shows like to mention. How some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did, since it helps them feel more powerful or something, fuels their ego. Like maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, William could be using that as an ego boost, which is messed up. And also ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory, aside from the whole him killing before his kids died thing. Also, how did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? Penultimately, in at number 2, First Victim. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it usually indicates what got them to start killing or other psychological clues that they could use to predict his next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is the year that Afton's life started going downhill in the worst ways possible. He starts killing off kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something even I fear. I'm not a parent, so I can only imagine how this must have felt. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put that down. I'd be doing it myself, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing and I don't even have someone that I could, in theory, make a daughter with. And finally, in at number 1, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is gotten his own kids killed. Sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte got Fredbear's clothes, which resulted in him having to open up circus babies, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other fun times, which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing the animatronic. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic used in the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a spring lock failure due to all the spring locks being active, since it was in animatronic mode, not suit mode, so there was nothing to fail, meaning that he had to have been crushed by the power of his jaw. And while you could argue that it was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth was overpowered? As the suit technician, William knew what was going on and intentionally souped up the jaw power. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with innards and then letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed, just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. In at 10, animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the start. Thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And that they were built with special containment chambers inside to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, which we see the Funtimes actually have in their blueprints from FNAF 6. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, even maybe before his kids were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which is not simple at all. If anyone cosplays Vanessa, feel free to hit me up on Instagram. Possibly killed wife. This hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so it's currently not canon. Many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise, even though technically we know nothing about her, and she could still be alive for all we know. Many people consider her to have died in either a car crash or because William killed her, and those are the most common thoughts on the matter. Although the her dying in a car accident thing came from a FNAF original music video that was probably using Minecraft characters that is in no way canon to the series. I've had people yell at me in my DMs telling me that it's canon that she died in a car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even canon that she died, really, but the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic parts filled bucket. Since it's only a possibility though, it's only number 9. If it gets confirmed, I'm more than willing to bump it up higher, because statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should have been on her guard. And it ain't missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's the inciting moment for the whole series, but I think it's worth calling out at least number 8. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated but were never able to find the bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives, alright. It just so happened to also be the end of their lives. And not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in this series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake, right? And at 7, stored his daughter. While we know Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter into an animatronic testing facility. That seems a bit too far if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was even the one who sent us as Michael down there in the first place, and then we get shoved full of innard bits so that they can escape. Did William know about that plan? Unsure, because in FNAF 6, Baby says that she'll make her dad proud. So was that William's intention to send us down there so Baby could get out? And if that was the case, why lock her down in there in the first place? I mean, if she was your daughter, why not have her just chill around the house, right? In the books, Baby is able to transform between Baby and a human looking animatronic at will. So why not add this to that version, and then you can have your daughter back, albeit a little more messed up. But more like you in the long run, right? I don't know. This family is messed the hell up, and nothing makes sense. And at 6, lied about Remnant. Now, this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full explanation as to why I think Afton was the one who lied about Remnant, go check out that video linked up in the iCard. But I'm going to wrap this up quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form, so how can it be molten but also be burnt by fire? It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he could be killed by fire, so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him, so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying, since literally every time he's been caught in a fire, he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and entered in FNAF 6, as we see from the Blob in Security Breach. Halfway through into number 5, Princess Quest. The whole reason that Princess Quest was a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanny's consciousness away, or to lock the Vanessa part away, and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, okay? So why did William create, or allow for the creation of a fail-safe that undoes all that work and allows for her to escape? I mean, sure, like, they didn't expect the kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of everything that's happened, you'd think that Afton would have smartened up after at least 40 years, but you know, I guess not. That's like having a self-destruct button on whatever thing you were gonna use to take over the planet or whatever. Or like if any superhero had a take all my powers button just like on the suit. Okay, why give it away to fail? Is that just the neurodivergent in me coming out? But like still, this is one of the dumbest things that William has done, and probably the 3rd dumbest overall. But it's seriously, dude, like why have a way to undo your evil plans? That's one of the most ridiculous things I think in this story. Alright, I get that it's like so that we can save her and have a good ending from like a gameplay perspective, but that ending isn't even canon, so we could have done without it. It's just one of the dumbest things known to man at this point. And if this is on the list of worst things that happened to Afton, you know this man is bad. Most of the that happened to him is his own fault. Honestly, like straight up, it's his own fault. And at 4, Possessed. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, this was one of the worst things that William had done to him. Or maybe he doesn't consider it a bad thing. Like I hinted at earlier, like maybe he didn't think that getting possessed by Cassidy is bad, since the one you should not have killed after all is still keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer, or at least they were making him suffer until sometime between FNAF 6 and Security Breach. So since it's potentially a bad thing, but also could be considered a good thing depending on the angle, it's kind of like midway on the list. But even if he does consider it to be a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, killing those 5 kids and making the missing children's incident a thing, it was a bad thing, since it caused basically everything else in your life to go downhill. And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others. Plus, it means that the law was keeping their eyes on you, because you know, kids died in your establishment after a couple of your kids had died. The missing children's incident wouldn't be something that he'd considered a good thing in that regard, but probably he would have considered it therapeutic. Getting close to the end at number 3, Henry. Why did you think that killing Charlotte wouldn't have any consequences? You killed your business partner's daughter. That is gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he was already suspecting that you were up to something. Like, he took extra care to protect her. Well, extra care, that's a whole other thing. But she still died. That's gonna be a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, and he hasn't even needed vengeance yet. After you know that he's after you, or he seems like he's after you, you don't kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, like, yeah, the cops were already suspicious of you, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. They didn't arrest you for the missing children's incident, alright? Especially a jury who needs to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. If there's no body, there's no forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for the missing children's incident, so like, just off Henry, and then you can stay yourself, or even stay Springtrap, and then not get burned 3 times, and Michael would still be alive, and you wouldn't have had to deal with FNAF 6. Just a whole lot of stupid. But ultimately, in at number 2, Robophobia. This is literally the phobia that this game is made for, and like, sure, it wasn't actually the reason that the game was made, like seriously, but this fear is perfect for these games. And while sure, the thought of mannequins can creep anyone out, Robophobia is literally the fear fear of robots and is surely the bread and butter of not only this series but for William as well. Because William must hate animatronics with a passion at this point. Since his victims possessed them, he got spring locked by one, he can only survive by being in one thanks to his consciousness seemingly being sentient code. But I mean, like, come on, that's ridiculous. If he isn't scared of robots, that would be a miracle, and I think that he kind of deserves to be scared of robots too, since, you know, he's combined with one, and that would make him in constant horrific terror, which is something that I think we would all love to see, but also would fuel him because of the constant agony that he would be feeling. So it would make sense, and understandably so, because, I mean, if I was killed or should have been killed by a robot, and I am now part robot, I would be pretty terrified of him. So, yeah. And finally, in number 1, baby. That's it. That's the number. Dude, he's the luckiest dude alive, alright? Your little girl was killed by a robot you made specifically to lure kids and probably got her design input on. And then you throw her in a storage locker and then she doesn't try to kill you immediately? That's pretty damn lucky. But if she is the blob, then 45 years later, or whatever the hell it is, come security breach, she does kill you, and you probably, hopefully, at least, I really, really hope that you're dead at this point. Just please be dead. I really hope that it was the blob that was baby and she got so mad that she just, you know, ended it. And I'm putting this at the number 1 because I hope that it's a thing. And at 10, sprung. So, this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that made the suits, handles the suit maintenance, and is explained to every employee that has to put one of these on the proper procedure and how, like, you don't get killed within the suit, ends up climbing inside in a panic in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful when he's facing off the ghosts of the kids that he killed, and then doesn't notice the moisture in the room, the leaking ceiling, just how wet everything is, which caused the spring locks to fail and replace every part of his body with metal. Wow. Which should have killed him. However, this lucky somehow managed to get possessed by someone who was so pissed at him that they kept him alive throughout all of his what should have been deaths because they just wanted William to keep suffering. Do you realize how counterintuitive that is? Like, the man literally wants to live forever, and now you are enabling him to do so. Old Man Consequences is right. Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul so that Afton can finally die and then actually suffer in hell for eternity instead of like the dream version you made up while he was recharging underneath the Pizzaplex. Or, I don't know, before he showed up to FNAF 6. Whatever you were doing, okay? Whenever you were torturing him, for all, like, with the fake hell that you made up, God, come on. And at 9, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has have to him, or have done to him by far, is getting his kids killed, but it's also not something that, like, someone did to him. Like, sure, he may not have directly done it, but his actions ended up resulting in all 3 of his kids dying, alright? So, yeah, that's why it's higher. Him killing Charlie got Fredbear's closed, which resulted in Circus Babies having to open, which made him dust off Baby and the other fun dimes, which were designed to kill in the first place. Then Baby ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing Baby. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic to use the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull, since that was not a spring lock failure. Due to all the, you know, the spring locks not actually being active. That's a whole other point that I rant about way too much. And while you could argue that that was Michael's fault, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth would be that overpowered, alright? If I'm sticking my finger in an animatronic mouth, I'm not assuming that it's gonna bite my finger off, right? So you just think that it's gonna scare the kid. And as the suit technician, William knew what he was doing when he was making that jaw. And then he also gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which ends up getting him stuffed with Ennard, which then makes Michael want to let himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions got all 3 of his kids killed, but then he still had to keep going after it happened. But since he did it to himself, that's why it's higher on the list. And also, if you like FNAF and you want to hear me rant more about it, be sure you hit subscribe, alright? We talk about it probably too much. We're talking about other stuff too though, so please watch those videos as well. And at 8, burn baby burn. William appears as the optional yet canon final boss in FNAF Security Breach, appearing as Burn Trap, according to his name in the game files, but also that's kind of a dope name. He only appears in the Afton ending, or the Burn, or whatever, the canon ending to the game, but this form is a result of Vanny downloading William's soul from like the digital realm to his old like hybrid abomination of an animatronic suit, like the endoskeleton that has still parts of his corpse, but also he's kind of upgraded with like a new arm and stuff, it seems. But also it's so convoluted that we can't exactly be sure what's going on. But he has his entire lower jaw ripped out. You can see his skull, it's still covered in blood. He has burnt flesh all over him because he's, you know, burnt. Metallic black eyes, purple pupils. The suit is missing fur. It's open chest. He doesn't have like a midriff. He's ruining all sorts of school dress codes at this point. His old endoskeleton, for the most part, has been replaced in some areas with endoskeletons that the glam rock animatronics use, making him now taller and having sharp claws. 2 of his fingers are replaced with like fleshy fingery bones still, so like he still has parts of his hand. It's horrible, okay? Like imagine having to go through that after going through the FNAF 6 fire. And then after that, having to go through yet another fire and a whole pizzaplex collapsing on top of you. Yeah, dude, what the hell? Just die already, please. And it's 7 Elizabeth. Elizabeth was an unintentional victim of Purple Guy, given that Elizabeth was in fact his daughter. Yeah. In the aftermath of his murder den closing, Afton sets up shop in a new restaurant he owned and operated called Circus Baby's Pizza World, where the feature animatronics were actually giant murder bots hungry for the flesh of children, because, you know, that's what the series has come to. Or at least that's what it had come to, and then it got worse. He warned his kids to stay away from the animatronics, especially his daughter Elizabeth, since she had such a fascination with the main star Baby, but she didn't listen, because of course she didn't. She's a goddamn kid, and you made the animatronics specifically to attract kids. So, in a moment of ultimate regret, she ends up getting scooped and insta-killed while Baby's arm grabbed her, pulled her in, and then like crushed her in her storage unit. Yeah, it was pretty brutal. And while he didn't kill her directly, he still killed her, okay? And then even victimized himself, since, you know, it was his daughter that got scooped, and the friends and family of the victim are also victims. This then leads him to discover his passion, but then this leads him to discover possession and agony and like the remnant metal thing. So yeah, I don't know how he knows that it was agony that did the possessing, but this then completely changes his motive. So it's a pivotal death in the Purple Guy chronology, so hopefully it'll be in the movie. And it's 6, Gabriel. Gabriel was one of the original 5 missing children from the first ever incident that we learn about in the games. We believe his soul is passed into the Freddy animatronic based on the gravestone ending and the placement of the FNAF 3 heads. Gabriel, though, hasn't really ever gotten much of a description, aside from a brief mention in the books. But that description could also be referencing Jeremy, and based on Crying Child from FNAF 4's 8-bit minigames, it could also be him. So there's not really much validity to it, but I mean, I don't know, he could still show up. I wonder how Gabriel feels about being the mascot of the company, in essence, which is kind of weird. Like, he's not getting paid for it. And with over 25 versions of the character being present throughout all of the games, I originally had a theory that we played as someone named Gabriel in FNAF VR, since we ended up getting stuffed into a Freddy animatronic at the end of the game. But yeah, then I thought that Gregory from Security Breach was going to be a Gabriel comparison, because like, you know, whole hiding in Freddy thing, Gabriel's in Freddy, but then he turned into Crying Child. So who knows? I don't know. Maybe that's who Grant Freely is playing, since it's a supporting character in the movie. Maybe that, I don't know. Halfway through into number 5, Crying Child. I've had a ton of people complain to me about how Crying Child's death wasn't William's fault, since he didn't put Crying Child in Fredbear's mouth, and Michael did that, and then the spring locks failing was because he was crying. Mostly people were complaining about that on TikTok. However, to me, there is no logical way that an animatronic jaw would have crushed his skull. And you know what? Even not just to me. It should be to all of you as well. The spring locks, like, they weren't in use. They didn't have to keep the things to the side because it was in an animatronic mode. And even if it was, an animatronic jaw would require so much power to actually, like, accomplish the closing of that. So like the only way that Crying Child's skull could have been crushed was if Afton had intentionally superpowered the jaw of Fredbear, which would make sense if he wanted to use it as a kill machine, or maybe even a backup kill suit, or maybe he was originally planning on using Fredbear, but then after his son got crushed in it, he was like, yeah, no, let's move on to Spring Bonnie, okay? This is just the worst way of going about it. There is no way that this was a springlock failure. The Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning that the springlock mechanisms, which are the things used to keep the robotic parts to the side, which are the things that would have failed, weren't being used. The The spring lock failure problem comes from when those mechanisms are put under stress of keeping the robotic bits away from the person inside the suit, and then they fail, and then that's when all the metal parts go back to where they were. So if it's in robot mode, the spring locks can't fail because they're already in use, okay? Keep in mind, again, the term for spring lock in this context is referring to the parts that move the robotic bits away instead of the actual suit, which is also sometimes referred to as a spring lock, but I'm talking about the actual bits that would have failed because they weren't in use. In at 4, Elizabeth. Speaking of mistakes, what about your daughter? I'm kidding, although we can't really be sure if she was intentional or not, but rather, I mean, what about getting your own kid killed? Like, I don't know how William thought that this was going to work out for him. I feel like this guy just thought, like, how do I capture kids more efficiently? Oh, I know, I can make a robot to lure them in, and then make sure that my kids love the design so that I know it will work. Hey, honey, come here, Dad wants your help designing this thing. Like, what? Because like then Elizabeth ends up making the most predictable move ever and then going directly against her father's instructions to see the robot that is basically perfect in her eyes. Like bro, like, William, why did you think that this was ever going to work out in your favor? Why did you think that this was going to just be all peachy? When has a kid ever listened to a parent? Especially at seemingly what her age is, especially when they might be loaded because you have a successful entertainment business, okay? Spoiled rich kids listening to their dads when they say not to touch a giant robot made specifically to appeal to their generation? Yeah, great idea. You are a special kind of stupid. Just like add a blacklist of kids not to take. Really. I mean, you have facial recognition tech in FNAF 2. So come on, just set up a blacklist. Just do it. Listen to the Shia LaBeouf and just do it. Getting close to the end, and number 3, animatronics. Like how the absolute living hell did he end up getting away with this? The smell of rotting bodies would also ruin the pizza place. The heat from the animatronics insides when they're actually like moving around would also speed up decomposition, and the animatronics are in front of people every single day. They even started complaining that the animatronics were leaking blood of mucus and it was smelling like death. If this was real life and William getting away wasn't important for the plot, he should have been caught on that and that alone instantly. Oh, we never found the bodies of these kids, but now these animatronics are leaking blood and smell like death. Huh, that's not related. Oh, they even make like bone crushing sounds when they move. And nah, we don't need to check these out. Or maybe we should. You know what? Fine, we'll take them in. Oh, look, we found the bodies of the missing kids. William Afton, you're under arrest. Like, boom. I don't see how this wasn't an open and shut case right away. Like, this was so goddamn stupid. They shouldn't have made it to the first game. His whole plan was a dumpster fire of bad ideas. And even if you think it was the puppet who put the bodies in the suits, why would they do that? Like, why would they hide the bodies? But ultimately, in at number 2, Springtrap. Being the brains behind some of the most advanced robotic technology in the universe, we'd expect a lot from William Afton. Like, maybe using the brain that made these. Or maybe that's asking too much. Because, I mean, he's the suit technician, but he's also the main killer who avoided the cops for how long? So, you know, he should really know what he's doing, right? Apparently not, since after discovering the original 5 animatronics were possessed, he disassembled them to learn their secrets, but inadvertently released the spirits of his original 5 victims. When seeing them, he ended up panicking, which is kind of reasonable in my eyes because, you know, they're freaking ghost kids, but also they're ghost kids that you killed. So, then this absolute animatronic genius, the technician that handles the suit maintenance and has explained to every employee the proper procedure for the spring lock suits, including the spring bodysuit he uses to kill people, ends up climbing inside the suit in an attempt to make himself feel more powerful and scare away the ghost kids. However, dumbass didn't notice the moisture of the room, the leaking ceiling, and just his probably sweat, which caused the spring locks that were active in this moment since it was in suit mode to fail, which would have killed him, if only. And finally, in at number 1, the Platinum Rule. The biggest mistake that William has ever made, and I will stand by this until the day I die, was the fact that he killed people in his own establishment, okay? If it's unknown if this was always his intention, or maybe if he planned to kill somewhere else and then just was like, now I'll do it here. But, like, Like, come on, who the absolute hell thinks that this is a good idea? Who in the comments wants to justify killing your prime demographic for your business? Okay, dealers don't kill their best customers. It's bad for business. So why would William think that this is a good idea? Literally go anywhere else. This is basically just killing someone in your house. Okay, it's putting unwanted and unneeded scrutiny on everything you do. You even end up getting banned from going back while the investigation is underway. It didn't help your business either, okay? You had to close the first location, resulting in you opening another one that killed your daughter, and then you had to close that one and open up a new one, which ends up getting closed, and then you get locked in a room for 30 goddamn years, okay? This one mistake leads to literally everything else in the series. You don't do that. The platinum rule, we learned this from Barney Stinson. Don't crap where you eat, okay? If you just don't do it. And it's N Cassidy. Assuming for this scenario that Cassidy is the one you should not have killed, which she's not, but you know what, for you guys. This is one of the dumbest things that William could have done. Or maybe he doesn't actually consider it a mistake, since the one you should not have killed, after all, is keeping him alive. They're doing it as a way to make him suffer, though. So since it's potentially a mistake, but could also be considered a good thing depending on the angle, I'm gonna go with number 10 for this one. But even if he does consider that a good thing, or if Cassidy doesn't end up being the one you should not have killed, which he's not, killing those 5 kids that made up the missing children's incident that included Cassidy was certainly a mistake, since it caused literally everything else in his life to go downhill. I mean, it was starting to go downhill, but it started going even worse, okay? And he does end up suffering extremely only because of that kill and the others, okay? So if you don't want to count Cassidy as the mistake, because she's not the one you should not have killed, which is still the case, I don't care what you guys say, I know. Count the missing children's incident itself as the mistake. Hidden 9 Blueprints. There is no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state of the art. There are just certain design choices that were made for these robots that we don't fully understand. We were hoping that you could shed some light on those. She can dance, she can sing, she's equipped with a built-in helium tank for inflating balloons right at her fingertips, she can take song requests, she can even dispense ice cream. With all due respect, those aren't the design choices we were curious about, Mr. Afton. This classic line of Afton being interrogated, I'm guessing, that plays the first time you open up Sister Location, just showcases how stupid this man is, okay? The cops know what these animatronics are capable of, and what they were designed to do. And you want to know why? Because the blueprints are just readily available. This man included wireframes of a child being stuck in Funtime Freddy and just left it on his computer. What? Why would you do that? Well, that's so stupid. So when they found that, because, you know, obviously they're gonna search his computer, they instantly ended up being even more suspicious of him, and then they were keeping an even closer eye on him. That's also probably why he ends up starting to dress in the spring Bonnie suit even, maybe, which ultimately ends up screwing him over as well. So yeah, designing the Funtimes as killbots was definitely a bit of a mistake, but then leaving the wireframes on your computer was something even dumber, especially considering how one of them was meant to symbolize your dead wife, and the other one ended up killing your daughter. In at 8, Charlotte. While yes, Charlotte may have been Afton's first true kill, causing his descent into madness, this is more so because of what she really turns into. Because, like, somehow, this also didn't make Henry end Afton instantly, because if he had, I would understand that. But in the games, Charlotte ends up possessing the puppet, who then gives life to the other animatronics, which causes Afton to disassemble them and then release their spirits that then scare you into your spring Bonnie suit that crushes you, and then you start going even crazier. But even discounting the game aspect of her, like, killing being a mistake, in both universes where William kills Charlotte, Henry comes after him for it, which results in what should be his death multiple times over. And not to mention how in the books specifically, unbeknownst to her, she is an animatronic robot that was meant to replace the daughter that Henry had lost, but it's also revealed that the animatronic is also, her adult form is also Baby as well, who can switch between her human and baby form at will, and then her human form doesn't remember being Baby. So yeah, Charlotte in the books also ends up being Baby, which is just a huge mistake for both Afton, Henry, and Scott Cawthon. And at 7, Henry. And while we did mention killing Charlotte, why didn't you off her dad after you realized that he knew everything? Like, why did you think that killing Charlotte would not have any consequences? Like, you killed your business partner's daughter. That's gonna be pretty obvious to him, especially when he already suspected you were up to something, hence the green bracelet that he gave her, since he was trying to take extra care to protect her and then she still died. I mean, he could have done more, but that's still a vengeful father if I've ever heard of one, okay? And he hasn't even needed vengeance at that point when he gave her the bracelet. So then, you know that he's gonna come after you, or at least seems like he will, so why didn't you kill him next? Killing Henry could have done wonders for your criminal career. I mean, yeah, the cops are already suspicious, but as long as they can't find a body, you're gonna be clear again. Like, yeah, or even if you're paying them off, you'll be fine. They won't put you away for 5 missing kids. They won't put you away for a missing father as well, especially a jury who has to be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that you are the killer. And then without a body, there's no real forensic evidence. And again, they didn't put you away for missing kids, so like, come on, just finally off Henry, and then you'd be able to stay as yourself or even Springtrap alive and then not get burned 3 separate times. Plus your son would be alive, so yeah. Well, Michael would be, not Crying Child. In at 6, Princess Quest. The whole reason Princess Quest is a thing in Security Breach was to lock Vanessa away and prevent her from regaining control of her own body, or at least all of it. So why did William create or allow for the creation of a sort of failsafe that allows her to escape? I mean, sure, they didn't expect some random kid to come along and figure it out, maybe, but given the track record of this series and Afton's life, you'd think that maybe he would have smartened up, at least after 40 fucking years. But, cause like, this is like having a self-destruct button on a bomb, or if the Flash has like a steal all my speed button that someone can just press, it's just stupid. Like, if you want something to work, why give it a way to fail? You know? Like, this is like probably one of the dumbest things that Afton has done. You know what, I think there are some dumber things, but depending on the way you look at it, it could have even been higher on this list. But seriously, like, what's the point to put a way to undo your evil plans? Like, it's one of the most ridiculous things in this story. And I get that we can save her and have a good ending, but that ending isn't even canon. So like, we could have done without it. It's stupid at this point. William has the brain capacity of a freaking toddler. Halfway through into number 5, Fritz. Fritz is also one of the original 5 missing children, being the victim who possesses everyone's favorite animatronic Foxy. Well, everyone else's favorite. My favorite's still Toy Chica specifically, because that one's not possessed. I guess in a way though, it was meant to be, given that both of their names start with F and are shorter than the other names. It kind of worked out way too perfectly in that sense. The others actually have similar names to their animatronics as well. Gabriel has the same amount of letters as Fazbear, Jeremy has the same amount of letters as Bonnie, Susie and Chica have the same amount of letters too. I don't know, it's freaking weird, man, but not much else is known about Fritz, and that's why I'm saying all this jargon. It's to extend the runtime of the video. There originally was a theory that Fritz was going to be a good guy who wanted to help the player in FNAF 1, but that was debunked in Ultimate Custom Night during an April Fool's update where Foxy's mechanics were changed to instead block one of the doors, and then this was also like said to be a joke by Scott, and he also added other mechanics like having Phone Guy and Springtrap connected, referencing the Phone Guy's Purple Guy theory and all that. But considering how Asher Colton Spence has been officially cast in the FNAF movie, I honestly, my first thought when I saw that kid was that he looked like a Fritz. Okay, his name is Asher, but he looks like Fritz. Orange hair for like the most orange animatronic, it makes sense to me. Okay, tell me, look at this kid and tell me that he doesn't look like a Fritz. He certainly looks more like a Fritz than a Gabriel or a Jeremy, alright? Speaking of which, in it for Jeremy. As I've said in multiple videos, Jeremy is the biggest fucking troll name in FNAF history, being used for 3 separate characters, none of them being connected, and only 2 of them are actually direct victims of William Afton. Jeremy is the name of one of the original missing children, and as I said earlier, goes on to possess Bonnie. And the other Jeremy is a playtester for the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience. The one who was testing the game before Tape Girl, who ends up finding Glitch Trap and then goes insane. And by going insane, I mean like genuinely ends up having a psychotic break. Jeremy ends up cutting off his own face, which is interesting given that the Withered Bonnie animatronic as seen in FNAF 2 is also missing its face. Huh. I don't know. It's interesting because Withered Bonnie is the animatronic possessed by the missing children's incident Jeremy, and then another Jeremy ended up cutting off his face. Now, I don't think it means anything, or maybe if it was intended or just a coincidence, but knowing the series, I'm worried that the smallest detail can have the biggest consequences. Hopefully, they can explain the recurring name in the movie so that we can all just like take a breather and have that load off of our backs, but I don't know. I can't look at people with the name Jeremy the same way anymore. There's a Jeremy in the office. I can't look him in the eye. Straight up. I can't look anyone in the eye, but that's the social anxiety. Getting close to the end of number 3, Casey. Casey is the main character in a Fazbear Fright story that I don't think we've talked about much in detail. I might have mentioned the story here and there, but I don't think there's ever been like a whole number on it, except for like one time where I've talked about roughly the same concept. Casey appears in the Fazbear Fright story Dance With Me from Step Closer, the 4th Fazbear Frights book. She ends up stealing some glasses that when worn either reveal or display a Ballora animatronic dancing. Honestly, this is the first character that I put on the list and the reason that I really wanted this list to happen, since the entire story revolves around how she was almost a victim of Ballora. Now, don't get me wrong, the story is very unclear in this regard, but it's generally assumed that the ending does imply that the little girl who gets the glasses back got snatched by Ballora, who spent the entire story slowly getting closer to Casey every time she put on the glasses. She returns the glasses to the woman who owned them, and then when her daughter puts them on, she starts dancing. And knowing the series, I highly doubt that it's because she's excited to see a 7-foot tall Ballora animatronic dancing right in front of her. Casey was very nearly caught by Ballora, instead having a little girl take her place, so yeah, I hope that she shows up in the FNAF movie because, first of all, Afton absolutely built those glasses because we all know how he felt about Ballora. So it's still a victim of Purple Guy, still a William Afton victim, so calm your tits in the comments. But I don't know, I want this explained because, yeah, I've been confused about it. But ultimately, in number 2, Susie. Susie was the first to die in the missing children's incident, which is pretty horrifying when you think about it, but also kind of liberating if you think about it in another way. Horrifying because, like, you get killed out of nowhere and that sucks bad, but also liberating because while yes, you're dead, you're also dead. And you don't really have to worry about anything else, okay? I suppose not in this case, since they go on to possess the animatronics, but like, they don't have to worry about anything in their future, right? Just getting revenge, that's their only purpose. And honestly, that kind of sounds like the life. Not having to pay rent, and just doing everything in your power to stop a serial killer, that's like my kind of vacation. But I digress. Being the first to die is a pretty serious thing. We know that she was the first thanks to Withered Chica's voice line in Ultimate Custom Night. Keep in mind that the Withered animatronics are the original ones after being decommissioned when the restaurant closes prior to FNAF 2, since FNAF 2 is still a prequel and the first games in the it's a whole lot. But the Withered animatronics are the ones we see in FNAF 1. And considering how the chairs and like the clapper boards seen in the BTS photos say Bad Cupcake, Susie is a very likely appearance in the movie, possibly even a focal point. So yeah, maybe this is a love story between Mike and Toy Chica, so I can vicariously live through him. And finally, in number 1, Crying Child. Okay, now this one is certainly going to be a bit controversial. There's going to be people mad at me in the comments, but there is no way that I could have done this list without mentioning one of the greatest debates of my DMs ever. The amount of people who message me on Instagram on a regular basis about the bite of 83 and how it wasn't William's fault bothers me to my core. They also keep saying that it's the bite of 87. It's not. Okay, they're two different things. I say this every time I bring it up though, the bite of 83 is not a springlock failure. It could not have been. The reason I know it wasn't a springlock failure is because the Fredbear suit was already in animatronic mode, meaning no springlocks could have had a chance of failing, since a springlock failure refers to when the mechanisms are being forced to stay open, and then the failure is when they close on you when you're inside the suit, okay? Plus, there's no springlock mechanisms in the jaw, and it wouldn't need it anyway, because like the jaw just moves up and down. I don't know what else to say. It would have had to be super powered in order to actually crush a skull, something that only William would be able to integrate, considering how he made the robots and is the suit technician. Alright, it's fairly cut and dry at this point. I don't know why people are still yelling at me in my DMs, but it's happening. I don't know, it could have been that he planned on using the Fredbear suit first as like his murder suit, and then his son got killed in it, and then he was like, yeah, maybe not, but who knows.
Number 10, his first demise. I would say one of the most iconically scary moments that involves William comes to us when his first defeat is revealed and we learn how he came back as Springtrap, or at least how he became Springtrap. Explaining how he lives after is actually more of a hotly debated topic than something that's super concrete. But at least we know how this happened because we see in the game. William Afton, arrogant as he is, flees the ghosts of his victims and attempts to hide and escape from them by getting in a Spring Bonnie suit. However, thanks to a puddle on the floor and his laughter at their inability to harm him, a little drip dripping into that puddle, the spring locks malfunction, causing him to be punctured all over throughout his body with the suit's springs and components unlocking. After being riddled this way, it would be assumed that William would have died because, you know, he's punctured all throughout his body with springs and stuff. But instead, he somehow manages to live on. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, and if you want more content like this, guess what? We got FNAF playlists. You can check them out and you can get even more FNAF content. Number 9. Appearance in FNAF 6. Scraptrap has always been a shocking version of William Afton to me as well. This is because while he is still very similar to his Springtrap form, he is even more tattered and worn here. There are whole chunks of him supposedly missing, including an entire arm, even though later he gets his arm back. Not only is this shocking to behold because it is simply quite a sight, but also because I guess I wasn't really expecting William to appear in FNAF 6 Pizzeria Simulator initially. I mean, I know he always comes back, but prior to that, seeing William Afton return here as Scraptrap was startling to say the least. For me, with both Springtrap and Scraptrap, one of the worst things about either, and both of them, are their eyes. Springtraps were very lively, but Scraptraps look like they really are ready to fall out at any moment. Number 8. Charlie's Fate. Well, this isn't exactly William that we see in this scene specifically. His influence is apparently felt throughout it, as he is believed to have been the one to basically kill the daughter of Henry Emily, his business partner. Charlotte's, or Charlie's, death is brutal and sad to watch, and it's all the more horrific to know that William is the man behind this, especially when you consider that this was a man whom Henry likely trusted. Whether or not this was intentional, it's pretty scary to think that even when William isn't in a scene and isn't actually there, he can still be the orchestrator working in the shadows behind it, the bringer of death even when shrouded in mystery.
And at 7, FNAF 3. Okay, look, the last few numbers may seem to make this not make sense, but listen, okay? Afton, in a sense, does die in FNAF 3, since this was meant to be the final game in the series until the fans were disappointed with the main jump scare, okay? So, prior to Scott releasing FNAF 4, William Afton was canonically dead, and the series was over. But after that, things were more complicated than they ever had been before. And many people do consider Afton dead after getting spring-locked, like I said, which isn't true, since he was being kept alive by the one you should not have killed, aka Crying Child. Oh yeah, you're gonna get mad at me, but it's true. But technically speaking, until the continuation of the story between the time of FNAF 3's release and the day before FNAF 4's release, William was dead. Oh, wait a second. He shows up in the final newspaper in the background, doesn't he? I don't know. Maybe he was never supposed to be dead, but the series was supposed to be. So as far as I'm concerned, if the series dies, so does the character. And it would have stayed that way too if it weren't for you meddling kids and your damn animatronics. Afton would have been dead in the spring Bonnie suit eventually, okay? Never being possessed by his son because he wasn't added. He would have eventually ended up shutting down just due to the wear of the animatronic, since Henry wouldn't have kept setting fires that would remove all the rust and whatnot. At least I think that's how it would work. And eventually he'd have been forgotten when Poppy Playtime came out, so yeah, this counts for me. And at 6, Glitch Trap. Currently, post-True Security Breach ending, there seem to be 2 instances of Afton roaming the halls of the Pizzaplex. Or I guess, one roaming and one trapped in a giant ghost of animatronics past blob. So, this really begs a philosophical question: is Glitch Trap truly an instance of William Afton? Because if it is, then everything we should know about the series and how possession works in the FNAF universe is wrong. Currently, from what we've established in this universe, there are 2 main ways to actually maintain life after what should have been death in this FNAF world, universe, whatever. Or at least in the games, there's 2, okay? The books also have human robots, but that hasn't been proven canonical yet. The games have Remnant and Possession, which are connected but aren't the same thing. Remnant is seemingly a byproduct of Possession, being a combination of metal and soul, showcased in the books as the 5 endoskeletons of the original Freddy's animatronics possessed by the original missing children's incident victims, and then Possession comes before that. But Afton wasn't possessing anything, he was being possessed, and Glitch Trap is an intentional feature within FNAF VR, along with also being a virus, or I guess the virus took the form of the main antagonist that was meant to be in the VR game. But it also takes control over Vanessa. The only explanation here is that either Vanessa is a robot, but then again, if she is, then why is she looking at herself in the rooftop ending if she doesn't have a soul because she is a robot? So maybe this needs its own video, maybe it doesn't, I don't know, let me know.
Number 5, the cavities. I mean, the fact that all of his attacks seem to have been premeditated based on evidence we have uncovered through the games seems like a pretty good reason to want William to suffer. A very interesting discovery came to us via the blueprints for the animatronics that we received during the video game Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. In these blueprints, it appears that some animatronics have chest cavities, with one even being shown to have been filled in with the drawing of a small person that is stuffed inside there. This seems to imply that William created these animatronics with the main secret purpose of using them to abduct and store his victims, using the animatronics as aids in kidnapping and killing, which is pretty despicable. Number 4. Charlie's fate. To many, William appears to be the mastermind behind the death of Henry Emily's daughter, Charlie, and for this there are many that feel he deserves to be punished, which to be honest is pretty fair. We don't know why William did this, but it seems to have been pretty intentional, and possibly was done either maliciously to hurt Henry for some reason, or even worse, to use Charlie in one of his twisted experiments in regards to achieving immortality, which it also seems plausible that William Afton could be obsessed with, although once again, this is us kind of figuring that out, but we don't really have it confirmed. William's never said it, but yes. Many believe though that that is his true goal, and at this point I am one of those people. Charlie also died all alone, which makes her death even more sad and more terrible, and for that I truly do believe that William deserves to be punished. Number 3. Countless victims. When it comes to William Afton, there are the victims that we know about, but there could always be more than that. Based on William's animatronic creations, it seems as though he was doing his best to make sure he had an endless supply of victims for him to use, possibly in experiments, either capturing and harvesting remnants as part of his experiments to make himself immortal, or simply killing for fun, or a combination of both of those things. Already his list of victims feels long, and what's worse is we don't even know if this list is complete. There could be even more victims we just simply do not know about. I'm half expecting to later find out that he has a den filled with bones similar to Pennywise's lair in Stephen King's It. I mean, who knows, there could be countless victims here. Number 2. Elizabeth's fate. One of the worst things that William has ever done in my opinion is possibly intentionally harming his own daughter. I mean, granted, this might not have been intentional, but based on what we know of William, the idea that what happened to Elizabeth was some kind of freak accident doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And if somehow her death was the result of an accident, then at the very least we have to consider what happened to her a terrible indicator of complete gross negligence on William's part, which yeah, either he did this intentionally and he's a super evil person, or he's like a really bad parent. I mean, William basically left her unsupervised around a robot it seemed he knew was programmed to kill, so what is that about? It seems more likely that William actually planned for this to happen in order to use his daughter's soul as fuel for another of his experiments. And sure, maybe he was, just trying to make her immortal like he wants to be, but there is no indication that she knew this, and so she could never have really signed off on participating if she didn't know. Like, there's no consent there that could be given because she didn't know about this if that was the intent, and I don't think it was. However, it seems that when his experiment resulted in creating the vengeful, manipulative, and violent being that is Circus Baby, William simply decided to terminate this project, which is probably why he sent Michael in. Number 1. Machiavellian Machinations. I like the title for this point. It is supremely fun to say. Machiavellian Machinations. Try saying that 5 times fast. Basically what this means is William Afton is a mastermind, a puppet master. He's just a person with a bunch of plans, and all of them are really no good. To be Machiavellian is to use emotional manipulation to gain something, either to achieve a greater goal or simply for your own personal gain. And machinations simply means basically to scheme. William is a master in both regards. He loves to scheme, and he definitely is happy to manipulate others in the process of doing so, to ensure his scheme's success. I mean, granted, we still don't really fully know what his goals are or what his main goal is, but we know that he definitely has something. I mean, I would hope. Could you imagine? He's like, why did I do it all? No reason. That would be so ridiculous. And we know that he doesn't seem to mind putting others in harm's way, even his own offspring, in order to ensure he achieves said mystery gold, whatever it is. Number 10, sociopathic. The fact that we have never seen William display a shred of remorse for any of his actions is a strong motivation for wanting him to suffer or believing that suffering is what he deserves the most. When confronted by the ghosts of his victims, he literally laughs at them. When his daughter has seemingly just been lost to him forever as the result of his own actions even, he seems to be calm, cool, and collected somehow, as though he isn't bothered at all by this. I mean, I know everyone grieves differently, but it definitely seems, based on everything else that we know of William, that he simply isn't grieving at all here. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Gaming, why not show us you love us by clicking that subscribe button? That way you won't miss any FNAF content. Goodness knows there will be more once this movie gets underway and once we get, finally, the Runes DLC. Come on DLC, where you at? Number 9, creating Vanny. What terrifies me the most? The idea of not having control over your own body, mind, or your actions. The idea of possession. In essence, this is what William Afton manages to do to Vanessa, or Vanny. I'm still not really fully certain if they're the same person, although I am like 98% sure they are, just based off of everything we saw in Security Breach, but I digress. With Vanny, William as Glitchtrap seems to have found a way to literally control and influence minds. Seemingly, with Vanessa being her own personality and Vanny being kinda like the evil side of her that was created by Glitchtrap's influence on her mind. In fact, it seems that William Afton is the one controlling Vanny and making her do his bidding, while her other half, Vanessa, seemingly has no idea about this other life she herself is living. I'm also not sure if this is straight up mind control, but it kinda does seem to be so. Number 8, because nothing else has worked. I think another reason that William really deserves to be punished is because this has actually failed to work. Every time people have tried to punish him, like, he just always comes back. So anytime we finally feel, oh, this is it, this is the end, he's finally getting his dues, he's being punished, he's never coming back, he always finds a way somehow to do just that, to come back again, and you're like, wait a minute, I thought we dealt with you. Not yet, I guess. Although I guess he was also forced to live for a while as a punishment, but really that doesn't seem like a very good way to punish someone who seems to enjoy using their time on this earth to hurt other people. It just seems like a good way to allow William to basically prey on more victims. Goodness. I don't think that was fully thought through, really. Number 7, hasn't explained himself. I think one of the greatest reasons why William deserves to suffer is because he still has not explained himself or his actions. How wild is that? I mean, it's been how many years in terms of how long we've known of William Afton? It has been over 5 years and he still hasn't really explained himself. What kind of villain is he? So many villains are like fans of monologuing, but I guess not like William Afton. He hasn't even really hinted at why he's become a killer or what purpose it serves. Everything we know for the most part has not come from the development of his character at all, but from other areas and elements of the franchise. Knowledge we then attempt to apply to Afton to make his motivations make sense. It's like we're just picking up these little clues along the way and then being like, could this apply? Is this why William Afton is how he is? I don't know. Could be, but also we could be wrong. Number 6, one suit. He only seems to have one suit, other than him wearing the spring Bonnie suit, which I would not count. I mean, what is that about? I mean, really, it's a crime against fashion. So now not only is he taking lives, but he's also offending our eyes by only ever wearing one purple suit. Why has this man only one set of clothes? I personally like my villains to have a bit more flair, and so for this reason I would say he really deserves to suffer for not mixing it up and proving that he can be just as suave as we'd assume he'd be, as we've been led to assume he is. I mean, I just think he would be suave because he somehow convinced Harry to partner with him and managed to open up a restaurant successfully, and it's been implied that William was the more charismatic of the two, so you'd think, you know, he'd show that through his sense of style. I hope in the movie he has a whole closet of purple suits, but that they're all different so that we can redeem him from being not just a law-breaking criminal, but also a fashion criminal as well. I mean, I'm fine with you wearing a different purple suit every day. I just want it to be different, you know? Just wanted to have a little bit of pizzazz.
Halfway through into number 5, Henry. In the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time, that time being 1983. And this is also the year that Afton's life starts going downhill in the worst ways possible. But he starts off killing kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, and I'm not even a parent. So I can only imagine how this must have felt for Henry. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put William down, okay? I'd be doing it with myself with my bare hands, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was only 3 years old, okay? Afton got lucky that Henry didn't have more initiative in my mind, okay? I have no idea why he didn't, because I'd rather go to jail for killing the man that killed my daughter than chase him for 50 years trying to burn him to the ground. But like, come on, okay? Who would really blame him too? Afton got so lucky that Henry is just a little who wants to use fire to stop him, okay? I wouldn't care about going to prison if Afton had killed my kid. No chance in hell, especially when she was that young. I would have choked him out with my bare hands and wrenched his neck. Also, hello to the jury. In it for zombie. There's also the possibility that Afton has been a zombie this entire time, and honestly, that makes me extremely angry. I'm masking it though. Because out of all the things that the FNAF series has done, this would be the cheapest and the worst. Forget Dream Theory, forget this all being a storybook, forget everything else. This would be the dumbest thing that FNAF could do, since it would basically come out of nowhere, okay? People already think that Michael is a zombie after getting innards shoved into him, but zombies aren't purple, guys, okay? And then making that into yet another, like, father-like son parallel would be so stupid and such a horrible retcon that it would be worse than it all being a dream, especially after establishing that Afton was being possessed prior to the spring locking, which would most likely have ended up with his death, and if he was made into a zombie, that would probably be his death point, okay? It would just change too much about the series for things to make sense, and would probably result in a whole lot of rage from the community, or at least I hope everyone would find this stupid enough to get mad at, because I would, and I want to be validated. Getting close to the end in number 3, FNAF 6. Could William have been dead before FNAF 6 takes place? I think it's a possibility, technically, because like, what happened to Springtrap between games to cause such horrific warps to his body? Like, sure, he was burnt in FNAF 3, but we also see him alive and not all that damaged in Sister Location's Night 7 ending cutscene. So where did all this additional damage and warping come from? The head becomes larger somehow, and so do the feet. I don't know, okay? This genuinely doesn't make any sense. We know that they're the same person, thanks to Ultimate Custom Night's voice lines, but I'm so confused as to what could have happened to cause this. I'm sure the extra damage comes from possibly fending off wild animals, since, you know, he's still a body, a rotting corpse that would attract scavengers. So how did the head of the suit get bigger? It's not like it evolved, it's not like it leveled up like freaking Magikarp from punching all these wolves. My only guess is that, like, William either broke into a Fazbear warehouse and tried to, like, reassemble himself, or, I don't know, maybe the gases from an actual decaying corpse, if he was dead prior to this, caused the head to expand, but even that wouldn't make sense. I don't know, we see so much damage. Maybe being a corpse just caused the suit to mess up because Scott was like, that's what I want. But ultimately, into number 2, the Blob. The true ending of FNAF Security Breach is seemingly one of the most interesting parts of the game because it contains a whole load of little things to watch out for. It also actually ends the game, which at this point I think is probably the best thing. After making our way into Burntrap's area, Freddy is going to be taken over by Afton's newest form, and then it's up to Gregory to defeat him by using 3 monitors with corresponding buttons that activate fire and seemingly trigger his weakness, which is a whole other story. Players, you'll need to avoid the animatronics that come out after you, but you can use doors to lock them out, you can use Freddy to scare him off. There's a lot that you can do. And then when Burntrap is finally burned even more, I guess at this point he's just trapped, because like in math it cancels out, right? The Blob, which was like a tentacle monster thing that was attacking us, then attacks Burntrap, William, and then tries to make sure he doesn't get free, okay? Then we run away, but my question is, does the Blob actually kill William? I don't know. Like, there are death animations in the game files, apparently, allegedly, I haven't seen them, but they weren't used, so we can't really consider that canon. Plus, the whole I always come back thing is definitely annoying, and I thought it would have ended before this game, but clearly not, so I don't know anymore. Just, God, for fuck's sakes, please let William be dead. And finally, in at number 1, Never Died. Currently, what we know about Remnant and Agony tells us that to destroy it properly, we need to burn it, hence why there are so many damn fires in this series. FNAF 3, 6, and Security Breach all end with something or someone getting burned. FNAF 3's fire was all about dealing with Springtrap, FNAF 6 was about putting everyone who knew about the atrocities to rest, and then in FNAF 9 we burned Trap multiple times to try to get him to stop possessing Freddy. And then it's all because Henry learned that the only way to destroy Remnant and put these things to rest was through fire. But how is that really is that really the thing? Because all 3 fires haven't really done anything. They haven't done We've been told that fire is the only thing hot enough to burn off the Remnant, but it's also been described as Remnant liquid metal. So if the soul infused metal can become a liquid, then how is it possible to just burn off the soul part? That's not how metallurgy works. I think it's metallurgy, I don't know. That's not how things work, okay? That's not how the universe works. Dr. Talbot is lying, he's William, alright? There's a whole video on it, go check it out, alright? William is lying, he made up the fire thing so he couldn't be killed. In a 10 spring lock. A lot of people still think that Afton died while being spring locked in FNAF 3. And honestly, when the game came out, this was actually seemingly correct. I mean, we never really saw Afton go limp like he truly died, but for all intents and purposes, Afton was dead in FNAF 3. But then, as more games came out and more was added to the story and to the lore, Afton was shown to never have died in the game, since, you know, he was, as we now know, being kept alive by the one you should not have killed, who was possessing him as an individual and was keeping him alive so that he could continue to suffer for all of his crimes. So honestly, before William even started his whole always coming back thing, he came back from the dead, at least technically speaking, which I still think is damn impressive, okay? I haven't died before, even technically, unless we count on the inside or my dreams, but hey, we don't need to talk about that at the start of a video, right? In a 9 explosion. Okay, so, well, physically speaking, William dies in The Man in Room 1280, the 3rd story from the 5th Fazbear Frights book. Quite extravagantly, might I add, exploding into a pile of mush right before a pastor's eyes. But how would that have been possible? How could William just have exploded like that? It's not something that you really think about, and I think I have an explanation, but it's certainly a bit more interesting than spontaneous combustion. William knew about possession and how it works, okay? He knew about agony and how his daughter got scooped and his son was crunched, so what if he tried to ensure his own survival by intentionally causing himself extreme agony, injecting or installing some form of explosive that when triggered or when in the vicinity of a Fazbear warehouse or trigger device would cause him to explode violently from the inside out, creating what is possibly one of the most agonizing ways to die, even in the FNAF series. I mean, this guy was absolutely mental, okay? Even potentially injecting himself with molten soul metal remnant in an effort to keep himself alive. So for me, it isn't out of the question that William inserted an explosive device into himself. But considering all that comes after this, glitch trap and whatnot, and the fact that burn trap still has William's body inside, I don't think that this one is really canon, and I don't think that this actually caused William to die. And if you're enjoying this video, guys, hit like, okay? It really helps us out, especially with the algorithm almighty. Praise be its name. So yeah, did you do it? Why the heck not? Okay, do it now, babe, please. In at 8, second spring lock. I say second, even though technically Afton's second trapping was in the books, but also some may not consider that possible in the main series, but you know what? In the context of the number, it makes sense. So, could William have suffered a spring lock failure before getting trapped in the spring Bonnie suit like we see in FNAF 3? It's possible. Explains why I say again as well, because, well, it would have been first, but it's again on this list. Since William is described to have scars that are consistent with a spring lock failure in the novels before becoming Springtrap. So, could it have happened in the games? Maybe. We don't really see William in a visual sense in the games, aside from him being purple. So, I don't know. Maybe William was the reason the spring lock suits were retired in the first place, since we hear of an unfortunate incident at the sister location. So, is that unfortunate incident William? There are plenty of people that it could be, none of which are named, but William having to deal with his own injury would certainly get them put out of commission for a time, but with William then continuing to use the suit to kill people and then putting it on again like we see in the FNAF 3 cutscene suggests that this scenario is unlikely, but you know what, it's still possible. So it's still a possible death.
Number 7. Way too chill. One of the other moments that features Afton and that I think is deeply disturbing is when we hear him speaking at the beginning of Sister Location. He seems to be talking to an officer here and is explaining features belonging to Circus Baby. The really creepy thing is that the officers would probably only be asking about Circus Baby if this is following the incident where the animatronic killed Elizabeth. If Elizabeth is his daughter, like so many of us believe to be true, and I believe it's been confirmed at least in writing, then this means he is calmly talking about the animatronic that killed her. How psychotic is this man? Is he in shock? Is this a sign that he's lost his mind? Or am I wrong in assuming that Elizabeth's death is something this fresh? I just don't see why else he would be questioned about Circus Baby by those who are implied to be members of law enforcement. It's a strange and disturbing moment in relation to Afton's demeanor and his story. Number 6. Possession. I think one of the most terrifying things we learn about William Afton in Security Breach, other than the fact that, you know, he's still somehow alive, which is honestly pretty terrifying, is that he can actually possess and control other animatronics. In essence, we learn in this game that William can basically now hack into animatronics and take hold of them, because, you know, he was glitch trapped, so he was digital, and now he can apparently do other things digitally. He lives in the internet. An especially scary thing to learn after we've befriended Glamrock Freddy in this game.
Halfway through into number 5, first victim. They say a killer's first victim is the most important, since it actually indicates maybe what got them to start killing or other psychological clues that could be used to predict their next moves. But in the case of William Afton, his first victim was the daughter of his longtime business partner Henry, which is hella messed up because she was 3 at the time being 1983. And this is the worst year of Afton's life too. It's time where everything starts going downhill in the worst ways possible. But he starts off killing kids and then sticks with that MO throughout the rest of his criminal career. But the fact that his first victim was someone who trusted him, who didn't exactly suspect him even though her father did, is something that even I fear, and I'm not a parent. So I can only imagine how this must have felt for Henry. And if that was me, I'd be doing a lot more than burning down restaurants in an attempt to put him down, alright? I'd be doing it myself with my bare hands, especially if he had killed my daughter when she was 3 years old. Like, I can feel the rage brewing inside of me already, and I don't even have someone with whom I could have a daughter with. So yeah, although the Atomic Heart twins could. Anyways, and at 4, stored his daughter. While we know that Afton isn't the best father, I think it's something else to end up locking your robot possessed by the soul of your dead daughter in an animatronic testing facility. Like, that seems to be a bit too far, if you ask for my humble opinion. But nevertheless, he still did it, and that's what Sister Location is all about. And William was the one who sent us down there as Michael in the first place, and then we end up getting shoved full of Ennard bits so that they can escape. Like, I don't know if William knew about that plan or not, because in FNAF 6, Baby says that she wants to make her dad proud. So, was William's intention to send us down there so that Baby could get out, or were we just supposed to learn the truth? And if it was so that she could get out, why lock her down there in the first place? I mean, if she was your daughter, why not just have her chill around the house? I get that she's a 6-foot-tall giant clown robot, but like in the books, Baby's able to transform between a baby and a human-looking animatronic at will, so why not add that to this version? Then you can have your daughter back. I mean, she'll be a little bit more messed up and a hell of a lot older, but she'll be like you in a lot more ways too, right? I don't know, man. This family's messed the hell up. Nothing makes sense. Getting close to the end, in at number 3, stuffed. One of the most deranged things that William Afton did was stuff the bodies of the original 5 missing children into the original 5 animatronics. Bonnie, Foxy, Freddy, Chica, and Golden Freddy. And the craziest part is how he didn't get caught for that. The animatronics smelt like death and started leaking blood and other fluids, and the police didn't bat an eye. It says so in newspaper articles from the first game. He put these bodies in the animatronics that perform for other kids and their parents every single day. How does anyone think that that's a good idea? Unless maybe it was his way of like displaying his kill or something, like how some of the crime shows mention that that's a thing. I don't know. Some killers enjoy the world knowing what they did since it helps them feel more powerful or something like that, fuels their ego. Maybe even if they didn't know that the bodies were there, maybe William was getting a bit of an ego boost from that, which is also messed up and kind of ruins the whole he did it because his kids were dying theory more than him making kill bots before they died, but still. How did the police not confiscate the animatronics for evidence? I don't get it, man. They were literally leaking blood. That's not normal. Oil isn't red. But ultimately, in number 2, later that night. The Midnight Motorist minigame seems simple enough, but the true horror of this minigame comes from the implications of it. Since, in the the game files, the minigame is known as Later That Night. Most people akin the game to what happens after William kills Charlotte outside Fredbear's Family Diner in FNAF 2 in the Take Cake minigame, but if that is true, this is one of the scariest moments in all of FNAF history. This man just killed someone, but then goes home to his kids. He reprimands his son and then abuses him by locking in his room, so much so that he has to break his window to escape. But think of all the people driving past him too, unaware of the violent crime that he just committed. It's terrifying because that would be the case in the real world too. I don't know, maybe this is the paranoia disorder speaking, but technically anyone we encounter could be a serial killer. And that is a horrific thought, since also technically you're only alive because everyone you have ever encountered has chosen not to kill you, which only makes the whole anyone could be a serial killer thing even worse. And you know what, in this case, this man literally just killed someone and then comes home and yells at his son who's been in his room all day because you locked him in there. God bro, how much residual anger can you have? And finally, in at number 1, Vanessa. Possessing Vanessa was certainly one of the more messed up things that William did. It just sounds weird, you know? Like, this guy just pops up in your VR headset and then takes over your body so that now you end up killing for him. That's just incredibly messed up. I mean, she knows what's going on, too. Like, she actively talks in hushed tones about how she can't talk about it to her therapist. So, like, what the hell is the dynamic here? I mean, possessing someone is already hella weird, but then causing them to make a rabbit furry costume because you're still a furry is a whole other level of kink that I don't even want to think about. And she also knows that there's an evil thing inside her, but she can't do anything about it, so she fears for her life, which only makes me wonder what William's been saying to her. And then she's also now, with full knowledge of her darker half, willing to lock a kid in a lost and found room until the police arrive, despite never calling the police because she knows her darker half is gonna come out and track him down because she wants him. And at 10, killed his kids. The worst thing that Afton has done by far is getting his kids killed. Like, sure, he may not have done it directly, but his actions end up resulting in all 3 of his kids' demises. Him killing Charlotte gets Fredbear's closed, which results in Circus Baby's opening, which made him have to dust off Baby and the other fun times which were designed to kill in the first place. Baby then ends up grabbing and crushing Elizabeth, resulting in her possessing that animatronic, because, you know, it was designed to lure kids and probably had her input. He superpowered the jaw of the Fredbear animatronic that was used at the new Freddy Fazbear's, which ends up crushing his youngest son's skull. And while you could argue that that was Michael, why would he think that Fredbear's mouth would be that overpowered? And as the suit technician, William knew what he was doing when he made it. And then he gets Michael killed when he sends him down to find his sister in sister location, which makes him learn the truth and then also gets him stuff with Ennard, and finally results with him letting himself burn in Pizzeria Simulator. So yeah, William's actions get all 3 of his kids killed, but just because he had to kill his business partner's daughter. In at 9, possibly killed wife. Now, this hasn't been confirmed as of yet, so this is currently not really canon, but many people still consider William Afton offing his wife to be the story of her demise. Even though technically we know nothing about her and she could still be alive, many people consider her to have died either in a car crash or because William got a little fed up. Those are the most common thoughts on the matter, at least. Although her dying in a car accident came from like a FNAF music video from the Living Tombstones that was probably also using Minecraft characters, although I don't think it was. But like, yeah, it's in no way canon to the series. Yeah, I've had to tell people this in my DMs after they've been yelling at me, telling me that it's a canon car accident, but no, it's not. It's not even actually canon that she died. But the potential is still there that William was the reason she kicked the animatronic part-filled bucket. Since it's only really a possibility though, it's at number 9. If it gets confirmed though, I'm more than willing to bump it up on the list. Although statistically speaking, your spouse is the person most likely to kill you, so she should be on her guard. In at 8, lied about Remnant. Now, this isn't confirmed, much like the fact that he possibly killed his wife. However, this seems like the most likely explanation to me. So if you want a full in-depth dive as to why I think Afton actually was the one who lied about Remnant, be sure you go click the video linked in the iCard. I'm hoping. It might be. But I'm gonna summarize it quickly here. Basically, there have been 3 fires so far that were meant to finish off William Afton, and none of them have worked. The reason Henry tried fire was because that's supposed to be the thing that can burn off Remnant. However, Remnant can also be found in liquid form. So how can something be molten but also burn away if it's set on fire? That doesn't make sense. It makes more sense that William made up the lie that he can be killed with fire, so Henry would keep trying and failing to kill him with this method so he wouldn't have to worry about actually dying. Since literally every time he's been in a fire, he has survived. And the other animatronics infused with Remnant have also survived, like Baby, the puppet, and Ennard in FNAF 6, as we see in the Blob. So yeah, clearly it's not working, dude. Try something else. And it's 7 missing children's incident. I mean, this is a fairly low-hanging fruit since it's like the inciting moment for the entire series, but I think it's still worth calling out at least at number 7. The missing children's incident, in case you forgot, is the infamous incident where 5 kids go missing inside a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza and are never seen again. Police investigated, but they were unable to find any bodies, thus they had to let their suspect, in this case most likely William Afton, go due to a lack of evidence. However, this is one of the most horrifically painful moments that you can think of, especially if you're a parent yourself. 5 families went into Freddy Fazbear's wanting their kids to have the time of their lives in 1985, but left without their favorite people. They had the time of their lives alright, it just so happened that it was also the end of it. Not only that, but Afton ends up getting away with it since the police were terrible at their jobs or were getting paid off. Still not sure which one is the case in this series, but the missing children's incident is one of the most messed up things to ever happen in this series, but without it we wouldn't have the series. At least it's all fake though, on this earth. And it's 6 animatronics. We can joke all we want about how Afton has a hardcore bloodlust in this series, but his desire for human destruction has been there since the very start. And thanks to the fast facts found in FNAF AR's files, we learned that the Funtime robots, the ones used in Sister Location, were actually some of the first robots that Afton ever made. Not exactly the first, but among the first. And they were built with special containment chambers to store away items, which we all know is code for children's storage tanks, baby. We see the Funtimes have kids inside them in their blueprints. So this means that Afton has been wanting to kill kids since before his kids had died. Hell, maybe even before they were born, depending on the timeline. Which at this point is as simple as my feelings for Vanessa, which are not simple at all.
Number 5, Springtrap survives. I think one of the most horrifying things to think about is how many times William seems to have somehow cheated death. Above all, his goal seems to be to become immortal, and in a twisted way, kinda seems to have succeeded there. This is showcased during the end cutscene in FNAF 3, where despite Fazbear Frights having been burned to the ground, it is revealed that somehow William Afton survived and still lives as Springtrap, now becoming even more grotesquely maimed than he was before, and even more of a shambling husk of a corpse trapped within the tattered Spring Bonnie suit. Number 4, Springtrap jump scare. Probably one of the scariest moments to me in terms of William Afton's appearances has to be in FNAF 3, when, you know, he first jump scares you and we get to see him. We didn't really know what we were dealing with in this game when it first came out and everyone was first going into it, and honestly a lot of people who even first played it were kind of like guinea pigs figuring out how it worked so that the rest of us could actually understand the mechanics. So when you look back at past playthroughs from your favorite streamers and your favorite YouTubers, this is one of the games that becomes straight up nightmare fuel in regards to its unpredictability when it comes to gameplay mechanics, but also the appearance of Springtrap here. He has to be one of the most frightening animatronics that we've encountered in the franchise to this day. So his first appearance as Springtrap is obviously gonna stand out. Number 3, Return in Security Breach. One of the most surprising and spookiest moments when it comes to William Afton happens when he appears in the most recent game, Security Breach. In this game, William Afton returns as a creature being dubbed as Burntrap. This is because he appears to be completely charred, and people also know he was last seen as Glitchtrap in Help Wanted, where he was supposedly completely gone but now just kind of existed digitally, so we thought, okay, this guy, he's gone. But of course, that was simply not the case. We had all hoped that Vanny would be the new villain taking over, but if there is one thing that remains true about William Afton, it's that he really does always come back. Number 2, Peripheral Presence. Definitely one of the most horrifying moments for me involving William comes from Help Wanted, as I think it well should, considering that VR horror is probably the most terrifying kind of horror game that we have. And understandably so, because with most games, you know, you can easily detach from them, but with VR it feels like you're fully immersed because they're not just out here and here, they're all around you. If the game of course is good. William as Glitchtrap doesn't even have to do much in this game to freak me out either. I think one of the scariest moments involving him is actually just in the minigame lobby where you return to after completing or failing a game to select your next one. Here Glitchtrap will seemingly kind of phase in and out of view, appearing on what feels like your peripheral vision. And despite not being as visible and present here, this actually makes his presence more menacing and threatening somehow. Number 1. Pizza Party. Another straight up nightmare scenario is at the end of the Pizza Party minigame, where you get invited to join Spring Bonnie, if you can successfully survive the maze. Although, at least you do get treated to delicious cake and pizza first. Well, I'm assuming it's delicious anyways. Obviously we can't really taste anything that we consume in VR reality. Attending this pizza party though seems to have consequences, and the ending reveals that you are likely one of William Afton's victims, with you appearing on stage holding a microphone at the end, implying that you have been killed, stuffed into an animatronic, and now basically possess it. In the audience you can see Glitchtrap gleefully dancing around, also really creepily, and seemingly celebrating. See what I mean? Nightmare scenario. This is also one of the endings you can get in the full game, so this is like, that's how it ends.